I want to preach a message entitled Hope for More. Hope for More. And if there's anything that all the craziness of 2020 I feel like has done on a consistent, broad scale level, even if you haven't recognized that's what it's doing, I feel like it has attacked the hope of people. And I don't mean just believers, but I mean people in general. It's attacked the wanting to do more and be more, the resolutions, the goals, the things that people set in order for them to be able to accomplish this year. I feel like 2020 has attacked our hope. My oldest son, Kaiser, he's 9 years old, and he really got into fishing this year. And our neighbor has a pond, and we're talking to our neighbor, and he's an older gentleman, and he starts to tell me and my son about this 20-pound catfish that he has in his pond. And I'm thinking, there's no way this guy, so my son, his eyes light up. He's like, a 20-pound catfish? He's like, how big is that catfish? I said, son, it's bigger than you are. And it's not, but I thought the old man was lying, so I thought I would too. And so what we did is we got some noodles and put some fishing string and some bait on them, and we throw them out in the pond. And I said, listen, Kaiser, we're going to go home, and we're going to wait a couple hours, and before you go to bed, we'll bring some flashlights out here, and we'll see if any of those noodles are underneath the water. So we take off driving towards the house, and my son kind of lets out a screech. I thought something was wrong, and I turned and said, what's going on? And he said, Dad, the noodle's under. And I was like, there's no way the noodle's under. So I turn around, go under, and sure enough, I can't find the noodle anywhere. And then finally it pops up, and I'm like, oh my goodness. And so we get in this guy's boat, and we're going to go out there and grab this noodle out of this boat, but the boat didn't have a plug in it, so it starts going under the water. And I was like, Gun, you got to get out. Someone's not going to be happy. So anyways, I get the boat back out of the water, and I get a fishing pole, and I throw it out there, and I get a hook into that noodle, and I hook into this fish, and I'm like, this is a 20-pound catfish. This old man is telling the truth. And my drag is getting set off, and he's pulling me. And after a lot of work, finally I get him right to the bank. And I'm like, we landed this thing. We caught this fish. He was a myth, and we caught him. And right when he gets to the bank, this catfish turns as hard as he could, or I feel like it was, and his top fin, his dorsal fin, cuts the line, and he looks back at us and smiles and just swims right back off. And I felt it, and I look at my son, and his eyes are a little watery, and he says, Dad, is there any hope? And I was like, nope, that fish is gone. There is no hope. But I told that story because, at least for me personally, I kind of feel like that has been my 2020 trend. I felt like there were some proverbial fish headed my way. I had some goals. I had some efforts, some things financially, spiritually, some things mentally, some things physically. No, they weren't coming. But anyways, there were some other things that I was believing for God to help send my way. And it seemed like they were headed this way. And then because of all the chaos of this year, I felt like, me personally, the line got cut, and then I'm asking my Father the same way my son asked his, is there any hope? Is there any hope? And what I found out is that when hope leaves, it's got a funny way of affecting us. It makes our heart feel certain ways. A matter of fact, you can see it in the book of Proverbs. It tells us this, the book of Proverbs. It says in chapter 13, verse 12, it says that hope deferred makes the heart sick. Hope deferred makes the heart sick, but desire fulfilled is a tree of life. Let's focus in on this. Hope deferred, or in other words, hope that you have to put on the shelf for another time, can make your heart sick. It can make you feel heavy, and maybe you feel different and you can't even figure out why, but maybe it's through the process of time and all the stuff that we as a nation and us as individually, us as a church, and then maybe just your household have faced this year. Hope has slowly started drifting. I like movies like The Lord of the Rings, or any movie where there's like a fortress and a castle and there's people inside it fighting the people on the outside it. And a lot of times it's over-dramatized, but I just really enjoy that. Like, I can picture myself up there and stuff. But anyways, but I really feel that. And what I like about those movies is a lot of those castles, they have a drawbridge, and it goes down and it comes up. And when I think, the way I got wired by God to think, is that when I read hope deferred makes the heart sick, I just see this drawbridge going down. And then all the stuff that hope used to keep at bay naturally on its own, and I don't mean just the hope in God's existence, but the hope that He can help me do more and be more, all the stuff that it on its own kept at bay, when hope gets deferred, the drawbridge slowly goes down, and it slowly starts to come in. And the things that just naturally, by the nature of hope that it kept outside of my life, slowly try to start coming into my life. For instance, it seems like there were people that had no problem believing that God was a healer, because their hope and faith in that kept all of the elements in this world at bay. But then you throw COVID on top of that, and it seems like if everything they were facing wasn't enough already, they would believe for themselves, they had faith for family members, but then you put COVID on top of that, and it seems as if the drawbridge went down. And rightfully so, there's so much going on, and things that started to get in, and now where they used to believe that God for sure would help them or someone they loved overcome, now they have some doubts, not in His existence, but in His ability, just because. And this morning, I do want to remind you of something before we go, is that as much as it is a thing, COVID is not the big C. Christ is still the big C. Christ is still the big C. Someone clapped. You can clap for that, because He is still the big C. And the reason it feels awkward to clap sometimes is because you're trying to decide right now, is He still the big C? And it doesn't mean that you don't believe that, but how long has it been that you remind yourself of that because of everything going on? When have you looked in the mirror and said, chaos is not the big C, cancer is not the big C, COVID is not the big C, Corona is not the big C. Any other thing that starts with a C is not the big C. Christ is the big C. Maybe you wanted to, you had some goals in your marriage, and you didn't have any trust equity, but you were going to start building the walls up around your marriage, and you were going to love each other like never before, communicate like never before, and you were going to be able to keep the forces of stress at bay like never before. And then you throw 2020 on top of those decisions that you made, and somehow in life those pressures allow the drawbridge to go down, and now that hope that you had that God could help your marriage become what you wanted it to be, what He wanted to be, has kind of got deferred, it's got put on the shelf, and now you've went from going forward to just surviving and trying to exist. And the reason that we can feel like that sometimes is because we don't always see some of these things coming. Like at the first of the year, it was like this hit, and then that hit, and then that hit. And I want to encourage you this morning is that you don't have to wait for the ball to drop, for the calendar to turn, for the clock to hit midnight, for you to have hope. You don't have to look for 2021 to give you what 2020 stole from you. You can look to God right now in this moment and say, you know what? Nothing else might change on the outside, but the drawbridge is going back up this morning. I am going to believe God like I used to, or I'm going to believe God for the first time, but hope is going to be a part of my life again. And then you say, man, I don't even know if I'm missing hope. Look and see if there's something different in you. Maybe your attitude has changed. You used to be positive, now you're cynical. Maybe you used to be a generous person, but now because they cut your hours, they laid you off, they limited your ability to work, and those hands that used to be free-flowing hands for the love of God in the area of money to flow into the church and help people's lives have now become a little clenched because the drawbridge kind of got let down. And I'm not beating anybody up because of that, because when you get let down, something else gets let in. And I understand the feeling of being let down. And I look to God and I'm like, God, you know, what's going on? Like, are you, you know, I mean, are you, I'm just being honest, are you, I know you're there, like, and it's kind of rhetorical, but it's kind of not, like, where are you though? Like, you're there, but like, where are you there? Because I'm looking to find you. And my youngest son, his name is Rowan, and he used to play a game. And it was hide and seek, but either he didn't understand the rules or he had it figured out to where he didn't ever have to hide. He would put his hands in front of his face like this, and I would be over there, and he's hiding. And he would close his eyes, and he would say, "You can't see me, Daddy," and just keep his hands in front of his face. And he said, "You can't see me, Daddy," and I'm over here. And of course, I can see him, but I would play, where's Rowan at? He's standing right in front of me, and I'd play the game. Where's he at? Yeah, I can't see him. And I tell that story to tell you this, is that I believe the same way he plays that with his daddy, that I am guilty of doing that exact same thing with my daddy. I assume that just because I can't see him and everything that's going on, that he can't see me. And it's tough to admit that sometimes, but if you look at the decisions we make, sometimes our decision-making process completely changes from the way it was before we had a breach in our hope. Used to, we danced with God and we let Him lead. He led the dance. But now it's almost like the dance we play with God is more like the hokey pokey, in the sense to where we have hope, and I can't dance, but we don't have, I could do this one though, but we don't have hope, and We have hope, and then we don't have hope, and then we have hope, and then we don't have hope. And depending upon where you found yourself in the middle of the year, it might have seemed like your back was completely turned to hope. I mean, you might have just completely gave up on hope. But this morning, I want to be like an alarm clock in your soul and say this: it is worth finishing the dance. Complete the turn and finish the dance. Put both feet back in hope. Don't look for any reason other than this right now, is that God has given you permission to hope again, and jump with both feet back in and hope. There's a character in the Bible, and his name is blind Bartimaeus. And although by the grace of God I can still use my eyes, I do relate to him a lot in this season, and maybe you will as well. And the story of Bartimaeus goes like this: is that he's blind on a corner begging, and Jesus is walking by. Historically, we find out that Jesus has walked by the corner he's begging on multiple times. And this Jesus, got all power in his hands, is walking by, and a blind man's having to beg just to eat. And can you imagine his frustration? Because he knows Jesus is there, but he can't see him. And sometimes I feel like that too. Because I know he's there, but I can't see him. And when I say I can't see him, I don't mean with my natural eyes. I just sometimes want to see him moving, like I want to see progress. I want to see prayers answered. I want to see family members' bodies touched. I want to see goals reached. I want to see things that I had to have his help to get done actually get done. And Bartimaeus, he's on this corner and he's begging. And finally, he's had enough. He's had enough. And the Bible says Jesus is walking, and since Bartimaeus can't go and get in front of Jesus and block him and stop him, Bartimaeus cries out, and he says this: he said, "Jesus, Son of David, have mercy on me." And the Bible tells me that gets Jesus' attention. And he comes over, and he says, "What would you have done for me?" He said, "I want to be made whole." And Jesus heals Bartimaeus' eyes, and for the first time, he can see Jesus. And this story, there's a lot in this story, but the first thing that really stands out to me is that Bartimaeus did not need his Find Friends app turned on to find where Jesus was at. He did not need GPS coordinates. He did not need Jesus to drop a pin so that Bartimaeus can go try to navigate the cosmos and hope to find God somewhere out there. All Bartimaeus had to do to exercise his hope was to call out to Jesus. And that lets me know that we are all qualifiers for the help of God, even when we can't see him, because we can call out to him. It's important to recognize this, and if you're taking notes, I want you to write this down, that it is more important that God sees us than if we see him. It's more important for him to see us. As good as it is for us to see him moving, it's more important to know that God's eyes are always on us. And in this story, in a practical way, I want to prove that to you like this, is that all the people that could see Jesus in this text didn't get anything from him according to the text. It was the man that hoped that got something from Jesus. It wasn't the man that could see that got something from Jesus. So I want you to know that it is more important that God can see you in your spot than for you to see him. And I know that's frustrating sometimes because we want to see something to be able to grab hold of it and to believe it and to walk with it and to run with it and to apply it to our life. And then I'm not saying that God doesn't give us things that we can't see, but I'm saying that the ultimate importance does not lie in your ability, it lies in his ability. Because the next thing I want you to know, if you're writing notes down, is that God doesn't need you to be strong in an area for him to be strong for you. God did not need Bartimaeus to be able to see for God to be able to see him. God didn't need Bartimaeus to have strength for God to have strength. God doesn't need you to grow up in a home with a good marriage for you to have a good marriage. God don't need you to have a loving daddy for you to be a loving daddy. He doesn't need you to go to business school to start a business. He doesn't need you to be a 10-0 extrovert to have meaningful relationships. Matter of fact, the Bible tells us like this, is that in our weakness, he is made strong. He is made strong. So he said, Ryan, I would hope again if I had this. I would hope again if this changed. I would hope again if I could just get this settled. No, you're putting something that can happen right now on the shelf, and it's not getting better on the shelf. Pull that thing off the shelf and hope like you have before, or hope like you never have before. And like Bartimaeus, just because you can't see him, that doesn't mean that he can't work. Call on God today. and ask him for help, and he will show up. I get frustrated sometimes when I can't see things coming or when I can't see God. I also get frustrated when I feel stuck. Matter of fact, I get claustrophobic really bad. I was sitting in my recliner just the other day, and I was in my hoodie, and I was sitting there, and for some reason, my brain forgot the instructions on how to take a hoodie off, and I just start kind of wigging out, and I had to have my wife help me take the thing off. True story. I was like, man, this is too much. I just don't do well when I feel stuck. I was hooking up some plumbing in my house when we built it, and there was some new cabinets that had just got installed. And I climb underneath there, and I'm doing good, and I kind of turn, and I'm hooking the plumbing up, and halfway through, something changed. I'm not for sure what changed, but something changed, and I just felt stuck. So I kind of go out, and I can't get anywhere, so I grab the cabinet, try to pull it out of the wall just to get out, and I had a buddy there, and I was like, man, you've got to get me out of here. Like, I'm done. Like, you got to get me out of this cabinet. He's like, your arm's in the way. I said, break my arm. Get me out of this cabinet. I can't do it anymore. I went to get an MRI, and I don't know what I thought was going to happen, but they put me on this little table thing, and they put me in there, and they're real nice, fake nice. These people are not real nice, and it's fake nice. And he's like, Mr. Gray, Mr. I was like, no. But they start this table. It starts, if you've had an MRI, I'm sure, but you could get it. There's a tube of death that a table puts you into, and it just keeps going and going and going and going. So it starts moving, and I'm pep talking myself. I got to, because I know these people are going to see a side. They're going to diagnose me. But so I'm starting to come in here, and they only had to get my shoulder. That's it, just my shoulder. And I was like, okay, we're good, just my shoulder. And we start getting a little bit past my shoulder, and I'm like, what do you need? You're taking a picture of my shoulder. You don't need my whole body in there. And they get to my waist, and I hollered at the guy. I was like, hey, guy. And I didn't know he had a speaker in there. So he's kind of invasive. He's like, yes, Mr. Gray. And it was really loud. And again, he's really fake nice. This guy's a bad person. But I was like, hey, you've got to get me out of here. And he's like, no, we're going to play some soothing music to help you. I was like, no, there's no chance. I'm a severe case. You've got to knock me out or get me out. There's only two things that can happen. You've got to get me out of this tube. And I tell you that story to let you know this. I felt stuck physically, but when hope leaves your life, you can feel that exact same way spiritually. I'm trying to love my spouse the way I'm supposed to love my spouse, but we're still fighting. I'm trying to raise these kids the way I'm supposed to be raising these kids, and they still ornery. You know what I'm saying? I'm trying to work this job the way I'm supposed to work this job, and there ain't nobody seen a thing. I'm trying to do all the things that God has asked me to do, and I'm not trying to earn it, but I do see it as a qualifier for His hand. Or in other words, God, if I will hope like this, my hope is that you will show up like this. And sometimes we feel like we're going into that tube, we're doing everything that we know to do, but we're getting further and further and further in. And when that happens, the drawbridge goes down, and hope begins to leave. And it might not be that we ever doubt His existence, but maybe if we were honest, we do start to doubt His abilities. Maybe we don't doubt like that He is God, but maybe we start to question His intentions. Maybe we start asking questions that we never would have asked before because hope got let out of the room. And when hope was present, it never would have happened because it kept those forces at bay. Now I want you to know that hope doesn't erase those negative things, because if it did, you wouldn't value it and you wouldn't need it. But it does keep it at bay. It doesn't erase them. They may still be there. But it keeps them at a distance to where it doesn't get into your heart and make your heart sick. One quality of God that I'm extremely thankful for because of my claustrophobia is that He can get things out of places that nobody else can get them out of. He can get things out of places that nobody else can get them out of. And that's encouraging to me because that lets me know that He can get sickness out of my life. He can get heartache out of my life. He can get despair and depression, and He can get all these things that I don't want in my life. He can get them out of my life in ways that no other thing or no other person can. And if I would just trust Him and walk with Him long enough, He can get those things out that hope being absent has let in. He can get them out of my life. And the reason that I know he can get sin out of my life is because there's some stories in the Old Testament. And I'm just going to hit a few of them, and I'm just going to give you like a spoiler for these stories. So if you've heard them, I want to encourage you to go look at them again. If you haven't heard them, hopefully these spoilers will encourage you to look in the Old Testament and find some of these stories and see how God restored hope and he was faithful to people. But the first story, maybe you've heard it, maybe you hadn't, is that he got Jonah out of the well. I thought that was pretty cool. He also put him in there, but he got Jonah out of the well. He got the children of Israel out of Egypt. He got Daniel out of the lion's den. He got the 3 Hebrew children out of the fiery furnace. You know what I'm saying? He got David out of lust. Come on now. He got Jacob out of pride. He got Noah out of the rain. I mean, he's done a lot of getting people out of things that no one else could get them out of. And all those stories in the Old Testament, as much as I like them and as cool as they are, those were just practice. God was just, I don't know if you can say that, like he's messing around, you know what I'm saying? Like God was just toying around. God was just doing some things to kind of give you a glimpse of what he could do. Because we get into the New Testament from the Old, and we find out that there is a man named Jesus. And Jesus lived a perfect life, and we sentenced him to a traitor and to a murderer's death. And up on the cross, Jesus quotes the Davidic Psalm, and he says this, my God, why have you forsaken me? Or in other words, for the first time since before there was time, the Son of God did not feel God. And what I want you to know is that he had to not feel God so that when you didn't see him, you would know that he would always be there. The Father had to be absent from the Son so that he would never have to be absent from us. And in talking about getting people out of places that no one has ever got them out of, the Bible talks about hell having gates. And previous to Calvary, they only opened in. And in Ephesians 4, it lets us know that once they opened in and Jesus went to hell and they shut behind him. Ephesians 4 says that it was the greatest power ever released on the earth. If you think the nuclear explosion in Chernobyl was something, it did not compare to what our Father God, the creator of the universe, did when his Son was in hell and it was time for him to redeem him and grab him and bring him back. He released the Holy Spirit out of heaven and he dropped like a missile into hell. And those gates that used to only open in, he grabbed Jesus, drug him out, and they opened out. He blew them off the hinges for the first time. He can get people and things out of places that no one can get them out of. And when he drug Jesus out of hell, he took you out of there with him. Scripture tells us that he led captivity captives. He did not leave there on his own. He blew those gates wide open so that no matter how stuck you feel and how hopeless you feel, you can still be like Bartimaeus and say, God, I don't see you, but I can call on you. And then when you call on him, he can restore your hope, and you don't have to stay bound, hopeless, feeling stuck, feeling like you can't see him anymore. He can get people into places or get people out of places that no one can get them out of. I believe that strong. I hope I've came across. I believe that strong. I feel it. I know it. I feel it for you, and I know it for you. But the other side of that coin is just as pretty. He can't just get people out of places that no one can get them out of. He can get things into places that no one can get them into. He can get love in your marriage. He can get food in your fridge. He can get money in your bank. Come on now. He can get a spouse in your life. He can do whatever you need him to do. He can get it done. And the reason I know that he can get it done, that he can get things into places that no one else can, is because there's, again, some stories in the Old Testament to where God got the children of Israel into the promised land. He got David into purity. He got Jacob into upright character. Come on now. He got Noah into the ark. He can get people into places that no one else can. And those are cool stories in the Old Testament. But again, God was just kind of messing around. He was just playing. He was just trying to set the stage for ultimately what he wanted to do. And you can turn the book from Malachi to the book of Matthew, which is the Old Testament, into the New Testament, and you see a story which is one of the strong points of our faith. It is something that drives us to believe, and that is this, is that the God that can get things into places that no one else can get them into got a baby in the womb of a virgin. And I'm sitting here thinking about it, and I'm processing it, and I'm like, if he can get the baby in the womb of a virgin, he can get me anywhere he needs me, anytime he needs me there. And I start looking at my trials, and I start looking at the things that I've made a big deal of, and compared to his ability, they start to shrink. And when my trials start to seem smaller, my hope starts to come up, and I start believing him again like I had before, or maybe even bigger than I ever had before. And I start thinking, you know what? I don't need the calendar year to change for my God to be a big God again. I don't need my circumstance to change for my God to be a great God to me again. My hope can rise up. It can rise up. And then it gets better. In the book of Colossians, the first chapter, there's a writer. His name is Paul. He wrote 2/3 of the New Testament. And he starts to tell us a story. He starts it in a good way. Man, it's almost poetic. It's got my attention. He's got me the whole time. He says, there is a mystery that has been hidden from previous generations. He says, and this mystery is why I got put on earth. He says, ages before, they guessed, they tried to figure it out, but they just couldn't ever connect the dots. And Paul said, you know what? I got put here to connect those dots for you. He said, this mystery is the most glorious and it's the richest mystery there ever has been. He said, and it's this. He said that the God that can get things into places that no one else can get them into has come to get Christ into your heart. He's come to get Christ into your heart. And his tagline right after that is that the God that can get things into places that no one else can get them into, who's came to get Christ in your heart, wants you to know that that alone is your great hope. You want to hope for more this morning? It's got to start right here. That the God that can do things that no one else can do got the Jesus that holds the whole world in his hands. He's that big. He navigated a way to get him into your heart if you believe on him. He navigated a way for him to be with you always, even when you can't see him. If you need hope, know this, is that it's with you every step you take. You've never been away from it. It's never been away from you. Don't wait for a certain time that's in your head for you to reactivate your hope. Do it this morning. Believe on God. Ways you have before, ways you never had before. And watch him show up when you call on him. Let's bow our heads this morning. Well, we think that you're gracious. Oh, you're such a good God. Father, forgive us when we haven't paused. Lord, forgive us when we haven't checked in with you enough to know what's missing. We haven't checked in with you to, Father, just to get the help that comes from you. I believe that there's a group of people in here, a couple different groups. But firstly, I believe there's a group of people in here that maybe after today, by the goodness of God, God has done something in your heart or in your mind or in your life. And I'm not asking you to make any big decisions, but what you are doing is you're going to say, you know what, I'm going to hope again. Like I've been sitting here and I realize that the drawbridge has been let down in one area or the other, and I need God to get me out of something. I need God to get me into something, but I recognize that I'm in need of him, and I want to hope like I haven't before, or maybe I want to hope again like I have before, but I need his help to do it. And if you're here and you know what, you say, I'm going to commit to hope. Would you just raise your hand right fast and put it right down? I'm going to commit to hope. Yeah, I see that hand. I see that hand. I see that hand. Yeah. And then lastly, I believe that there's a chance that there are a group of people either online or even here in the building that what you're longing for in your heart is not to hope again, but you think it's time for you to hope the first time. You want to call on Jesus as the Lord of your life for the first time. You recognize that there has been a hole in your life, and today the light has shined on that, and you know that receiving Jesus is what is going to fill that void. And if that is you and you're in this room, you said, you know what, today's my day. I want to hope in Jesus.